Welcome back to Cricket Aviation. My name is Jim Payne, and in this video we're going to go over the final installation of the rear canopy frame, and the comm antenna. Now, one of the things we have to deal with prior to doing the final riveting on the rear canopy is how we're going to seal and or glue the canopy to its aluminum frame. So we're going to discuss a few of the options that I came up with in this video, and you're also going to see what I ended up choosing as a sealant to use between the Lexan canopy and the frame. So please watch the video, like the video, and if you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I'm trying to finish up the last few things I need to do before I final glue this rear canopy assembly. I wanted to do that and have that glued in place, and also have this front skin glued down before I finish the framing of the actual canopy itself. I just want to make sure that when I trim the canopy that I don't have anything move a few millimeters that's going to make things not align anymore because I've riveted things after the fact. So I want to do this stuff first. So one of the last things I had to do was to create these little fillet panels that go like right here on either side that are just supports for the rear canopy hoop here. So I cut these out on the CNC machine, and they were already pre-drilled. So what I'm going to do is just finish drilling these where they need to go, and mark the holes on here and go ahead and get them drilled out and ready to be pop riveted into place. Let's see. Once I'm done with that, I think I'm ready to actually disassemble the whole rear canopy, and I want to prep this skin back here because I want to get this painted in the back before I actually install the canopy. And I think I'm just going to use like a silver aluminum paint color back here. I was thinking of going with white, but I think if I just make it more of a silver color, I think it'll look nice. So that's my plan, and once I get that painted, then I can get the seatbelt support riveted in. And then this whole rear part should be done. You can see there's a little blue piece of tape back there. I did drill a hole for an antenna that I did get installed, and let me see if I can find it here. Oh, so this is the antenna I ended up selecting. I actually got a black rubber one that I thought I was going to be able to mount right behind the seatbelt bracket there, but it was too tall. It said it was 14 inches, but by the time you got it installed, it was like 15.5 inches, and it would have hit the canopy on top. So what I did is I got this stainless steel one here. This looks like it's a really good antenna. I've actually seen this on a couple other CriCris on videos on the internet. I actually didn't see that until after I bought this one, because I figured, well, this was the only one the aircraft spruce had that was cheap enough that I could install and fit it somehow on this airplane. That was what was really nice about this, is it wasn't very expensive. I can't remember exactly what the price is, but maybe it was $100, maybe 80 something. I'm not really sure. But what I did is I drilled a hole actually in the canopy up here. So let me put this in, see if I can fit this through here. And what I'll probably do is put a grommet in there. Then this comes up, and then it'll fit down into the hole there, like so. And it kind of sticks up like that. And then it gets mounted there. There's actually a standoff, so it sits up about 3/4 of an inch higher than that. But I did get that fit in there, so it's straight up and down. It's kind of neat because it looks like a radio-controlled airplane with that thing sticking out the back. I did see another builder that actually took that antenna, instead of drilling a hole through the canopy here, just reversed it so that it was inside facing this way, which probably would work just fine. I actually like the looks of this better, but you wouldn't have to drill a hole through the canopy if you use this antenna and you just flipped it around backwards. Which again, like I said, I don't think it matters. Take this off, but yeah, I think you could actually just fit it in here like this, and have it facing forward, which is actually probably a smart idea. But anyway, I'm gonna do it the other way since I've already drilled a hole in the rear canopy. But let me finish these few things and we'll get this ready to glue in. I have to glue this around the edges. It took me a while to try and figure out what glue to use. I did some testing and I actually used, it's a clear glue and it's called Goop. And it was one of the recommended things to use for Lexan. And I thought, well, I'll just give that a try. I don't know what else to use. I didn't want to use anything that might turn yellow or something that was gonna, not be clear. Again, I'm not really sure how critical it is. It's just a matter of getting it sealed around the edges, I think, is the best thing, and make sure that it's got a little bit extra support for those 3/32 rivets that go in there. All right, so let me finish getting these clecoed in, and then I think I have everything drilled and ready to go, so I can disassemble it and start painting the rear fuselage here. So I'm getting ready to glue and pop rivet the rear canopy on. So I took it all off. I cleaned this whole area back here, and I did paint this. This is actually painted with what's basically an aluminum colored spray paint. And it actually came out really, really well. I really like this paint that I'm using. And all it is it's Rust-Oleum Professional aluminum color. And they actually make an aluminum primer and they make an aluminum paint, both in the Professional series. And so I decided to just paint this back here because I didn't want to deal with bare aluminum back here because it's very difficult to get back in here to clean anything or polish anything. So I just wanted it to be painted. I considered painting it white, and I thought, well, why not just go with this aluminum color? It actually blends in really well with the airplane, and it does look like, if you take 6061 and you just machine it, it's almost exactly this color. So what I'm doing now is I did want to get the seatbelt bracket installed. I had painted this previously with the same paint. I put the pop rivets along the top, and then I went to do the solid rivets back here. And these are supposed to be flipped around the other direction, so the head is on the inside because the thinner material is on the inside. It makes sense, but there was no way, because there is a lip on the bottom of here, that's 12 millimeters just like down here. There's no way for me to get my rivet squeezer flipped around and in there. So I could get my rivet squeezer in there, but the only side that I had, the 1/2 inch adjustable gap was on the flat side, not on the button head side. So anyway, so I went ahead and just put these in with the head side this way. It was the only way I could really use my rivet squeezer to put them in. Now I am having an issue with the top rivet. I haven't put it in yet, but I can't get the rivet squeezer in there because I installed the pop rivet on the top already. So what I'm gonna have to do is drill out this pop rivet because it's actually in the way, and I can't get the rivet squeezer behind there to pull that rivet. So I'm gonna knock this one out, pull this one, and then I'll put a new rivet here on top. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that. I am doing it in reverse than what the plans show, but again, I don't really have a choice at this point because there's just no way to get it to fit. I don't think it's going to make any bit of difference in this case. If I'm pulling hard on this to rip that thing off, I've probably crashed the airplane. So anyway, I'm going to finish up this, and then tomorrow I'm going to start prepping to glue and install the rear canopy. That's going to be quite a trick because I've tried to figure out exactly how to glue it and how to put it on and how to get the pop rivets in, and it seems like a fairly difficult process, but what I actually think I'm going to do is I am going to glue one side of that canopy on because the canopy fits. It doesn't need to be stretched. It doesn't, I think what I can do is actually put the glue on one side, tape on the bottom edge of the canopy, and glue on the canopy, pop rivet one side in, and then fold it over and actually work my way from this front corner here on the other side all the way back to the end. And then I'm going to install the hoop actually at the end. So after I get the two sides in, the hoop will still fit, and then what I can do is actually install the hoop and the glue at the same time and glue that in and pop rivet around the top. I think that's going to be the safest way for me to be able to do this and get glue in and rivets in and keep going, because what happens is you start pop riveting here, the sides here, you can't get glue in here. And so it would be very difficult for me to try and do everything at once or try and get both sides done and then work my way back because the glue is going to dry before I get to the back anyway. So anyway, that's what we'll work on next, but let me see if I can get this last pop rivet here, or last solid rivet here, and pop rivet back into the seatbelt bracket. I'm getting ready now to final glue the rear canopy onto the CriCri. I'm trying to get the rear canopy done and get the fuel tank installed and get the forward canopy done so I can really focus on getting the actual fit of the main canopy completed. But I've got to do this first, and I've gone round and round and round trying to figure out what in the world to glue the edges of this clear Lexan to this aluminum frame on the back here. It just says in the manual it's supposed to be glued, or it should be glued, and obviously because of the size of it and we want it to stay in place, it should be glued not only to help seal it around the outside here, but to hold it in place. Obviously we've got a lot of pop rivets in here that should hold it pretty well, but the issue I'm running into is that I'm concerned about using an adhesive or a glue that is potentially going to damage the canopy if I get it on it. In other words, some of the glues will actually etch the surface of Lexan, which obviously will give you a good bond, but I'm concerned about the mess of trying to get glue on there, get this in here, get pop rivets in it. I'm just worried that this is going to make a huge mess, and I'm going to risk damaging the clear Lexan. Because not only do I have to attach it on one side, I got to wrap it around, I got to attach it on the other side, and I can't get into the other side, while I'm gluing it. In other words, I got to get a glue on everything and try and fit it into place and try and get rivets in. And anyway, so my initial thought was, okay, I could just use epoxy, right? I know epoxy is going to bond really, really well to the aluminum. It's probably not likely going to bond well to the Lexan at all. So my concern there was that this rear canopy might need to be replaced someday. If it gets scratched or it gets cracked or it gets broken, something happens to it, I'd like to be able to take it off. Now, it doesn't need to come off easily, but if I put epoxy all over these aluminum, flanges here, that's probably not coming off. And the other thing is, if you put epoxy all over this, you put the rivets through, the epoxy drips off the end of the rivet, it gets all over the back part here that I'd like to keep clean and looking nice. So the other thing I had found is somebody had mentioned using goop. Goop is actually a clear adhesive, and they said it works really good for Lexan. Now, I did test a piece of Lexan with aluminum and tried to bond it together, and yes, it worked. But it's more of a contact cement that sticks well to Lexan. And what I mean by that, the issue with that, using that even, is that you're supposed to put it on both surfaces. So I'd have to put it on the aluminum lip here, and I'd have to tape off and put it on the side of the canopy that I was going to bond. But then you're supposed to wait like 2 minutes, and then you're supposed to attach it. Well, I don't really have 2 minutes. In other words, it would take me longer than 2 minutes to put that all the way along here. It would take me longer than 2 minutes to get it on the canopy and then fit it into place and then go ahead and put the pop rivets in. I don't have really enough time to use a contact type adhesive. The other thing is that although that bonded well, I was still able to rip the pieces apart that were bonded with that, and it left kind of a rubbery, almost silicone glue behind that I could roll it off with my fingers, which it made it easy to take off and clean off if I ever wanted to take the canopy off. But the bond wasn't great. So then I started thinking, well, I wonder, nowadays there's a lot of double back adhesive type glues or tapes that are out there, and so I started doing a little bit of research on that, and I came up with this this Gorilla Super Glue tape. It's double-sided, it's indoor-outdoor, it's crystal clear, and it comes in a roll like this, and it's very, very thin. Unlike some of the other tapes that you might find at the store that are double-sided, a lot of them are thick, designed to be put up against a wall in your house with texture to hang like pictures and stuff, or do against a concrete wall, but that they're too thick. I really wanted something that was extremely thin, but extremely sticky. And so I did a test with that just yesterday, and I glued a piece of aluminum here onto this piece of Lexan, and then just this morning I tried to rip it apart. That stuff sticks amazingly well. It stuck way better than the goop did. And by using the tape, I could actually put the tape all the way along the aluminum here and leave the piece you're supposed to peel off. And I could start down here and start installing the canopy and peeling back the tape a little bit at a time. And I actually think that's going to work quite well. It didn't etch into the Lexan, but it stuck extremely well to both the aluminum and the Lexan. It did pull off the Lexan first, but I didn't really even clean this Lexan when I did it. But the bond was actually way better than I would have thought. And I think the good thing about using possibly this is that I should be able to get it off at some point, either with acetone or something else. I think once it dries completely, it's probably pretty solid, and of course it says it is a permanent bond. But it appears like it would come back off the aluminum with a little bit of work, maybe scraping, maybe using acetone or something to get it off. But I think in the short term, while it's in use, that it will bond quite well. And so I'm actually thinking about going this route. There are other tapes that you could use. I even looked at using like a carpet tape, which again, it's a very strong adhesive to glue, dissimilar surfaces together. But like I said, this seemed to work so well that on very smooth surfaces, I really think this super glue tape, and it says it's super glue tape, but I don't know what they really mean by that. It's not super glue because it stays tacky. Even, I did this yesterday, and the surface that is sticking out is drying now, but it's still a little bit tacky. But it doesn't dry quickly. In other words, it took overnight for the piece of tape that was exposed to actually start getting hard and getting, actually curing. So I think this would even get stronger as the days go by here. So again, I think this is what I'm going to try and use, is just use this Gorilla tape. It seems like it's going to make a very good seal between the two surfaces. I got very few bubbles inside of here at all. And I think with that combined with the popper rivets, it sure isn't going anywhere. And I think, like I said, I think I'll be able to replace the rear canopy at any time without destroying the back of the airplane here. So I'm going to start working on this next. I'm going to see if I can get the tape on one side. I'm going to then see if I can pop rivet one side of the canopy. Then what I'm going to do is fold it over. Of course, I'll get tape on the other side, and I'll start pop riveting the other side of the canopy. I'm actually going to do the hoop last. I have the hoop, it fits right in there. And I think what I can do is pop rivet and glue both sides here and do the hoop added in afterwards. That's my plan anyway. So anyway, I'm going to start working on this, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get a little bit further. So I've just started the process of trying to install this rear canopy. Now what I did so far is the aluminum flange that's down here on the bottom, I did put that double back tape all the way along the edge there. Obviously I've left the backing on there so far, so I haven't taken it off. And I pressed it on there really well. I used a squeegee, I used my fingers and pushed it on there, to attach it to that aluminum angle down there as strongly as I could. Then this overlapping piece that goes in the front, I'm gluing that on too because I want to prevent water from coming down the canopy and just getting behind there if this gets wet or if it's washed. So I'm going to put a piece of that tape again underneath this outside piece too, which I did already, and again it's stuck to it. The backing tape is still on it. Now what I'm trying to do here is trying to figure out how to get this on here without it moving or without it getting it misaligned, because this is once you get this tape stuck, it doesn't come off. So what I decided to do is I temporarily put the hoop in the front, which I'm actually not going to attach right now. So what I'm going to do is pop rivet all the way along each side, leave this so I can pull this out, and I'm going to glue this or attach this later on where I can just tuck it up underneath here and then pop rivet it in place. I do have that strip that I did a little bit differently than the plans, where I've got a strip of aluminum similar to this that's on the outside that runs on the inside of here, and I'm going to tape that onto this before I put the hoop in. So that'll be a secondary step after I get the two sides attached. So I have this on here temporarily just laying against this so I could support it. I put just 2 Clicos in there right now just to hold it. And then I think what I'm going to do is start at the front and just peel back the tape, stick the canopy to it, peel back the aluminum, the tape that's under the aluminum here, press it down here in the front while it's aligned by other Clicos down here. And then go ahead and start the pop riveting process. And then when I get partway down here, probably down to this one here, I'll then take all the other ones off and I'll work my way from the back to the front. It's going to be a little tedious to do because it gets tight back here. So Anyway, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do this to keep everything aligned, because I don't want to just start in one place and then find out I'm having to push the canopy down because it's stuck at a different angle up here than I wanted. So I'm playing around with this, trying to figure out the best method. I'll show you what it looks like when I get a little bit further here. Okay, after thinking about this a little bit more, I've only got one way I can really do this. There's no way for me to peel this tape off, the backing on the tape off, and work my way down from one end to the other. So I think what I'm going to do is take out the clecos that I have right now, just lay the canopy over here. I'm going to take the tape all the way off that aluminum strip. And I think what I'm going to do is take it off of part of the outer strip. And then I'm going to get to the point where I can just attach these two clecos through it and get the canopy stuck like that, because those two clecos, because the holes are very accurate, it's aligned quite well. So those two clecos will really ensure that this canopy is at least going in square. So I think if I can get to that point, then I can just work my way forward, work my way backwards, and even if I have to peel the tape off this outer piece, as I go, that's easy to do. But there's no way for me to take that tape off the inner piece as I go. There's not enough flexibility in the canopy. So again, this is my key cleco right here that's basically in the center. That's going to kind of allow me to work forward and backward from there, as long as I can get the canopy attached with that one spot. So that's my goal. We'll see if it works out. Okay, I've got the first side done, and it worked pretty well going from the front to the back. I didn't have much of an issue as far as alignment goes, so it fit pretty well. Now on the other side, I'm going to work on that one now, and obviously what I'm going to do is start on the back here and work my way forward, because that's the tightest spot. So I got to get that part down first, and then the rest will just lay right into place. So I think I should be able to do this pretty quick on the other side too. So but this tape worked really well. I really like it. The question is how well is it going to hold up? But that double-sided super glue type tape, it definitely sticks. I mean, I've done several tests with it onto pieces of aluminum and acrylic, and the bond is as good as I could hope for any other glue I would put on there. So I think it's going to work out good. Let me see if I can get the other side done here. Well, I was able to get both sides glued and pop riveted on to the rear fuselage here. This worked pretty well. I did run into a problem back here. The last two rivets, I didn't put them in, but I forgot that I had the glue tape on the back of here, and I glued it to the canopy before putting this piece in. So I had to use a spatula to peel it apart, and it was nearly impossible. I thought it was going to bend or break the aluminum. So I was able to pull it back. I was smart enough and figured it out before I did the other side, and I cut the film on the tape on the other side and left it on there so that it covered the last two rivets, and took that off right before I installed this. So but anyway, this stuff seems to be holding really well. I'm very happy with it. I stuck the antenna in there just to check the fit. I do have to get a little grommet to put in here, so I'm going to drill this hole a little bit bigger and just make sure that the antenna seals the hole on the inside, and that the outside is sealed by the canopy. Now I'm actually very glad that I did this without installing the hoop here, because it would have been almost impossible for me to pull that side of the canopy down tight without it pushing back against the hoop here. So the fact that I'm doing this in two steps, where I'm doing these sides first and then coming back and inserting the hoop later, which will be easier to do because I already know it fits. So I do have the aluminum trim piece that I did, a little bit different than the plans had shown. I have an aluminum piece that's similar to this piece on the outside that goes on the inside of the canopy, wraps around, and then the hoop goes underneath that. And the reason I did that was to hide the cutouts that I have on the hoop to do the bend around the outside, or it covers the flutes. If you did flutes instead, I decided to do it in two steps, where I put this strip in here, and then I actually used the CNC machine to cut out the notches and then bent the tabs over. So I didn't want the tabs to show, so I put a piece in here. Now the nice thing about doing this that way is that I can put adhesive on the strip that goes in the back in here right now, and I'm thinking about doing that and then go ahead and install that strip on the back and just use clecos to hold it in, and it will glue and adhere to the edge of the canopy, and it'll also help protect the edge of the canopy when I'm putting the hoop in and out, because I can still fit that in here. I've got a little bit of trimming I need to do on the edges so they don't show out the backside, but then what I think I'm going to do is, since there'll be aluminum on the inside of here and aluminum on the hoop, I might just use epoxy then to glue that trim edge piece to the hoop once it's installed. But again, the glue is not going to show because it's going to be hidden behind this strip of aluminum that I'm going to put on the edge here. So that's the only other thing I'm going to do right now is to try and get that edge piece installed and glued in again with the same glue tape that I have. So now that I've got the rear canopy attached on the sides, I'm getting ready to permanently bond the hoop that goes around the front here on the rear of the fuselage. So I'm just starting off with drilling out all the holes at the top here. I drilled them out to 1/8 inch, and I'm going to go ahead and glue the doubler that's on the back here to this and get pop rivets in here and get that done first. Then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some taping off on the inside of the canopy so that I don't get any epoxy that ends up off this lip that I glued in here. I just want to make sure that if there's anything there, I can just pull tape off and not get it stuck to the canopy. The epoxy is not going to come off that canopy well at all, and I can't use acetone or anything on it or it will melt it. And I've got a little bit more cleanup to do on this. I've got some underneath this tape here, I've got to trim these edges that I had on here because they stick out a little bit past that piece of metal or strip of metal that I glued on the inside of the canopy. So I just want to make sure that none of that shows. So I got a little trimming, a little cleanup on this, but otherwise it should be ready to glue in. So again, I'm going to start off by just finishing that joint there in the middle. So just to recap, because I know I haven't shown this in a while, this is the forward or the rear canopy border that I made, and you can see I cut this out on the CNC machine to have these notches in it, and so by doing that I was able to not have to use the flutes, but of course this reduced the strength a little bit, so that's one of the reasons I added that aluminum strip of 20 thousandths that goes around to the inside of there. But the nice thing about this is if I had fluted this and just glued this in here, I would have had to have dealt with the glue and the canopy and installing this with that, and then of course through the canopy you could still see the flutes in here, but by putting that solid band around there and attaching that to the canopy first, now I can go and epoxy this to that band and you won't see these holes behind it or the flutes behind it or anything else. So I think this was a good solution. I really liked doing this and I would do this again. It was much easier to form this with these cutouts in here rather than dealing with all the flutes that would have had to have gone into this to get this curve to happen properly. So I'm going to keep working on this and go ahead and glue the center part here together. Okay, I've got the hoop center support glued in and pop riveted. It turned out okay. So what I'm going to do now is prepare to install this in the front here. Now I'm going to have to put glue on each one of these fingers. And I can tell I'm going to get glue everywhere. So what I'm trying to do is protect the canopy as much as possible, because I'm afraid if I get any epoxy on this I won't be able to get it off, because normally you just take acetone or something, but acetone will eat into the surface of this Lexan, so I don't want to get any epoxy on here. So what I'm going to start off doing is on the inside here I'm going to put some blue tape on the inside edge of this strip of aluminum that I've already attached to the canopy. I'm just going to run that all the way around just to give myself a little bit of protection. After I get the hoop glued in, I'll be able to just take that tape off, and if there's any glue that ran over the edges, hopefully I've kept it off the canopy. Now the other thing is I've noticed that along the top of this hoop, the fingers that are along the top here are not curved quite as much as I would like them to be. Even though I pounded these on a wooden form, and they came out pretty good. What happens is when I cleco this in along the top here, I do end up with flat spots that kind of appear around the top. It's not a continuous smooth curve, and of course it's so minute, but it is visible. I can see it with my eye, and since we have a canopy that's going to go mating up to that, I want to get this curve across the top as smooth as possible. I don't want those flat spots, or that's going to show between the the actual canopy here and the rear canopy. So what I'm hoping to do is put enough glue on top of these parts here and not cleco the top end. So what I'm going to do is put glue on all those fingers. I'm going to try and fit it up in here, and then I'm going to try and start clecoing it here on the sides down, and I already kind of tested this. It's in here super tight, so I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm going to have any gaps along the top at all. I'm not. I'm just preventing the the high spots on either side of the rivet from the pop rivet sucking it down in the middle. And it's, like I said, so minute I couldn't even probably put anything in to use as a gap filler other than the glue. So what I'm hoping to do is have the glue fill the gap along here. It's pulled tight enough that once I start clecoing it from here down, it's pushed in there so hard that it has a very tight fit, but I'm not going to pull it down with the pop rivets until the glue has dried. So what I'll do is I'll let the glue dry, I'll drill the holes out again through the epoxy and put the pop rivets in, and I think I'll get a nice smooth curve along the top here. I wouldn't normally do that except for the fact that I know this thing fits in here so tight. It is stretched all the way across here that I'm not going to get any gaps between the aluminum edges and this aluminum piece underneath here. There's just going to be a slight raised area of glue in the center. Again, it's just to aesthetically make it look nicer. So let me see if I can get this glued in and not make too big of a mess here, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, well, I finished the gluing and pop riveting of the rear canopy support hoop. This turned out pretty good. I'm actually quite happy with it. I did end up getting a little bit of epoxy on the Lexan, and of course I tested on a test piece of Lexan to verify that yes, acetone will eat into Lexan immediately. So if you try and wipe off Lexan with acetone, it will cloud it up and immediately start to melt it. So what does work though is I was able to use mineral spirits. Mineral spirits did not harm the Lexan at all, and it did, soften up and allow you to wipe off any excess epoxy. It's a little bit of work because it wants to smear. It doesn't really want to dissolve it like the acetone does, but it does work and doesn't appear to hurt the Lexan. So the last thing I have to finish on this rear canopy is these corner supports. So I'm going to go ahead and clean these up and get these pop riveted in the corners here using 1/8 inch pop rivets like the manual tells us to do. So that's the last step I'm going to do, and then this rear canopy should be done. All right, rear canopy installation is done. I got these corner supports in. The fit turned out perfect with these. They look really nice. So very happy with how everything turned out here. I mean, it's as good as it could be. I'm not really too worried about. Now you notice I didn't allodyne these surfaces at all. There is going to be some canopy supports that go along here that get installed, and then I believe there's even some Divinycell foam pieces that we put in here as a support, and then this should be almost like fiberglass. I still have some wavy edges on the inside here, which I don't really care for. I'd like to see if I can straighten that out a little bit, but I think if I end up putting the angled supports here for the canopy and then covering that with foam like it kind of shows up in the manual, then fiberglassing that around this edge might be a good solution to finish it and make it look nice. But otherwise it looks good enough to me. So one of the things I did want to finish up on the rear canopy as part of this whole process on finishing up the rear fuselage was to get this antenna installed. I did find a grommet at, I believe I found it at Lowe's. It was 3/16 inner diameter, which seems to fit fairly well. It's not too tight. I could still stick the antenna up through it, slide it up far enough to get the bottom part in there. And I just have a nut on the back right now. I haven't actually installed the antenna wire, but I am going to do that almost immediately. So that I can permanently screw in that antenna from underneath here. And I'm thinking, I don't know exactly where I'm going to mount the radio. I'm still trying to decide on an inexpensive unit, but it seems like most people are installing them right over here, right underneath the instrument panel. So I think what I'm going to do is underneath this stiffener here, which is this stiffener here, and this one here, is to drill a small hole through the frame that goes from up here all the way back into the rear fuselage to the point where I can pop out and then connect to that antenna up there. I did get an antenna wire with the antenna that I bought, but I do need to shorten it. So what I'm going to do is cut off the two ends that have the lug on it, the lugs that attach to the antenna, and drill this hole, route the cable through, and then pull it back so that I can resolder the ends back on it. That seems to be a good solution, but I do want to just get that cable laying in here with the the BNC connector at the end here just hanging off about where I'm going to install it with a little bit of slack in case I need to adjust its placement. But I'm going to work on that next and see if I can get that cable installed and attached to the antenna. So this is the antenna cable that I got with that antenna. I believe it's 9 feet long. But you can see on the ends here, it's got some soldered and crimped connectors that connect to the bottom of that antenna that's in the back. And what I'm going to do is just cut those off so that I can just get down to the width of this cable, that I can drill a small enough hole that this will fit through to route this from the front to the back where the antenna is actually installed. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut maybe 3 feet off this. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to route it, resolder the, or figure out exactly how long it needs to be, and cut the ends off. I do have to give myself enough cable to get back out here though, so that I can solder these ends back on after I feed the cable through. But I'll feed it through and I'll see how much I can take off. I don't want to have a whole lot of extra, wrapped up here in the front behind the radio that's installed. Okay, let me go ahead and cut these off, route this cable, and we'll see about attaching these ends back on. So as you can see, I finished running the antenna cable through the bulkheads along the fuselage here, and this is how much I have left sticking out here. It's longer than it needs to be, but I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do with the radio. If I'm going to mount it underneath here, I may actually even install some kind of handheld. But there wasn't a whole lot to show here. I drilled the holes, I ran the cable through, and then I just resoldered the ends on it and attached it to the antenna back there underneath the fuselage. And I did secure the cable back there. But I was also thinking maybe of taking some of those 3M sticky supports that you can put a little tie strap around, and putting those in between the frames just to make sure that it doesn't move around too much. In hindsight, I kind of wish I had installed grommets in there, because I didn't. And really, this should have grommets going through a framed member with any kind of wiring. Now, I'm not too concerned about it here because I am going to secure it in between so the cable isn't moving around. The other thing is I don't have two-stroke gasoline engines, which would cause a lot of vibration in this airplane. I should have virtually no vibration at all. So at this point, I'm not too concerned about it, but I think if I run any more cabling in the airplane, I will likely use grommets. This was the first holes I had actually cut through these frames. There's no mention of cutting holes through the frames, what's allowed, what's not allowed, so I was a little bit concerned about going too big with any holes. Anyway, I think it's going to be okay for this, because obviously the insulation on these BNC cables is very thick. And then there's a ground, behind that. So I think between inspections, this airplane's not going to get flown a lot. So I will just inspect and make sure that there's no rubbing or chafing that's, damaging the cable at all. But anyway, that's done. I've got, that cable installed. So now everything here on the rear fuselage is basically complete. In the next video, we are going to talk about the let's see, the pitot-static lines and probably the GPS antenna that I did run. So again, we'll go over that in another video, but I did want to get that antenna completely installed and the cable run at the same time I was finishing this canopy. But so at this point, the rear canopy section is basically complete. And so thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber. See you on the next one.